Welcome to our online experience for Easter Sunday. It's a really important day for us in church, so we hope you enjoy the video that we've got for you. So if you love watching our videos every week, don't forget to like and subscribe. The links are down below. Our worship partner this week is the Belonging Co. If you'd like to sing along, the words will be down below.
We will lift our eyes, we won't fear the fight. There is one who's stronger. Heart pressed on each side, we will not lose sight of the one who's greater. One name holds every victory. One voice that silences the enemy. One king who reigns for all eternity. Jesus, Jesus. came from glory, took on flesh to save the lost, grace and mercy displayed upon the cross, our redemption. He's the hope for all mankind, one name over everything, one name over everything. Jesus over everything, He reigns forevermore. Our song for all eternity, Jesus Christ is Lord. Who can rival our resurrected King? In one moment He brought death to its knees. All the power, oh, and all authority to one name over everything. Yes, one name over everything. Oh, Jesus over everything, He reigns forevermore. Our song for all eternity, Jesus Christ is Lord. Yes, Jesus over everything, He reigns forevermore. Our song for all eternity, Jesus Christ is Lord. Oh, He is Lord, He is Lord. Over fear, over shame, over all anxiety, over troubles and all pain, over sickness and disease. For He reigns on the throne. All praise to Him alone. One name over everything, over death and all sin, over hell, over the grave. Darkness bows and demons flee at the mention of His name. For He reigns on the throne. All praise to Him alone. One name over everything. Oh, Jesus over everything, He reigns forevermore. Our song for all eternity, Jesus Christ is Lord. Yes, Jesus over everything, He reigns forevermore. Our song for all eternity, Jesus Christ is Lord. Oh, our song for all eternity is Jesus Christ is Lord. Yes, Jesus Christ is Lord.
I've said it, I'll say it again. His disciples stole His body. It's that simple. You don't have to believe it. They just did what they had to do to support their myth. Except the idea of them taking the body is almost as ludicrous as what actually happened. Okay, you see this? This is a Roman seal. Now, it may not mean much to you, but when I use this to seal anything, whether it is a letter, a deed of property, or a tomb, it means everything. Whatever has this seal on it is under the supreme authority of the entire Roman government. So, these religious leaders who had this guy, who had Jesus executed, they were just convinced that his followers were going to steal his body and try to convince people that he resurrected from the dead. So they demanded that Pilate seal the tomb. That's where I come in. So I sealed it with the full weight of Caesar himself. Then there's 16 of us standing arms length apart surrounding the tomb, right? And so this idea that we dozed off and they stole the body, do you know what happens to a soldier who falls asleep at his post? Best case scenario, he is beaten, burned. In all actuality, what would have happened is all 16 of us would have been executed. So no, as the story goes, we did not fall asleep and they did not steal the body. But I was paid good money to tell that story. How am I doing so far? You want to know something that is crazier than that story? That morning, the earth began to shake under our feet. And then this enormous being appeared. It doesn't matter how hard I try, I can't do it justice. All you need to know is this. When I looked inside that tomb, that man who I'd seen executed in the most brutal crucifixion I'd ever witnessed was gone. So why are the 16 of us still alive? I'm telling you the real story. The truth is, he wasn't just gone. He was alive. He is alive.
Hey, happy Easter to our Elevate family, and especially all of you joining us for the first time today. Great to have you with us. Very, very special day, and we're thrilled that you're part of our online experience on this Easter Sunday 2022. Because, wherever you're sitting here, watching, joining in from, your living room, out in the wild, wherever it may be, we're joining together with hundreds of millions of Jesus followers all around the world who are celebrating this historical event that Jesus was raised from the dead. And 2,000 years after it happened, we're still building our life and building our faith on the hundreds of people and the eyewitness accounts of those hundreds of people who saw Jesus physically in the flesh, alive, merely days after they'd seen him nailed to a cross and killed. And look, I get it. This sounds a little far-fetched. Someone was dead and then several days later, they're alive again. This just doesn't happen. And, unsurprisingly, even to this day, it sparks some skepticism. People hear this so-called fiction story, fairy tale, about some guy named Jesus who died and then rose from the dead. And, it's understandable that they might think, I don't think that's true. And in an era where gaslighting and fake news are on the increase, I'm okay with a little skepticism. In fact, I think a little skepticism in life might safeguard you against being taken for a ride. But is this story true? Is it to be believed? And if so, what difference does it make in our lives today? And thankfully, this idea and this notion of skepticism, we can fact check. In fact, in life today, fact checking has never been easier because you and I almost certainly carry around a portable internet machine. And anytime you hear something that you're thinking, not sure if that's true, you can just ask the internet and hopefully you'll get an accurate answer. I can speak from personal experience. This idea of fact checking doesn't just happen for me in the wild. It happens for me in my own home. Just about a month ago, Louisa, my wife, and I, we were watching the NBA, the American National Basketball Association, and she asked me, is this very popular, NBA? And I said, yeah, it's the most, globally, it's the most popular of all of the major sporting codes coming out of the US. And Louisa was surprised to hear that. And she said, is the most popular sporting code in the world? And I'm like, no. The most popular sporting code in the world, hands down, is soccer. And she's like, really? Now, Louisa is a full-blooded Italian, the daughter of a soccer-mad, soccer-obsessed father. And when I say soccer-obsessed, I mean 1 year when Louisa was growing up, she stayed up late to watch the World Cup with her father. Italy were playing. And during the game, the opponent scored a goal against Italy. And Louisa witnessed her father literally, not like metaphorically, literally pass out and fall off the couch onto the floor. This is the family that she grew up in, and yet she was not aware that soccer is the most popular sport in the world. I went on to say to her, in fact, it's the only sport in the world that's played in every single country on the planet. It's true, and I thought I was just pretty kind of forthright and convincing. Nevertheless, she reached for her portable internet machine and fact-checked me on this idea. We are, however, I think more inclined to believe eyewitnesses, more inclined to believe people who have experienced something for themselves. That's why Netflix have added features like top 10 in your country today, sending an email blast out, what people in your area are watching now. Just this week, by the way, you may have caught it, some of the shows, they've added a new feature that says most liked show, a show that you might have missed, but everyone that's watched it liked it. So you probably will too. And for the most part, that's helpful. These are eyewitness reviews, people who've touched it, smelt it, tasted it, experienced it. This is why online retailers send you a follow-up email after you've bought a product and ask you to review it. How's that product working for you? And they click and they put a link in for you to review it. Yelp, the entire Yelp ecosystem is built around reviews, and people go to Yelp before they choose to book. This is because we have a greater faith in eyewitnesses. Well, let me take you to an historical record written by an eyewitness documenting his and some of his fellow band of brothers of their eyewitness experience with Jesus several days after they had seen him killed on a cross. And this is written by John. John was one of Jesus' handpicked 12, and John became one of Jesus' 4 biographers. And therefore, he was an eyewitness to Jesus' public life, an eyewitness to Jesus' death, and then, as you're about to see, an eyewitness to Jesus coming back from the dead, very much alive. Later that day, this is what John wrote, the disciples had gathered together, but fearful of the Jews, they had locked all the doors in the house. Jesus entered, stood among them, and said, "Peace to you." And then he showed them his hands and his side. And the disciples, seeing the master with their own eyes, were awestruck. Jesus repeated his greeting, "Peace to you. Just as the Father sent me, I send you." But Thomas, sometimes called the twin, one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. Well, the other disciples told him, "We saw the Master." This was the very first Easter Sunday. In fact, it had been early, John says later that day, because what he's documenting is that at the break of dawn, some of the women who had become close followers of Jesus had gone to the tomb to essentially finish the burial and embalming process, only to discover that the stone entrance of the tomb had been rolled away. And as they peered into the tomb, they noticed it was empty and just had Jesus' burial garments sitting there. And then they literally encountered Jesus standing outside the tomb, again, very much alive. And they ran back and told the disciples. And so now there's just this chaos and confusion and what's going on and what will the Jews think if they discover this is indeed true. And so they're locked in a room. And Jesus appears to them, although John made the point that one of the handpicked 12, Thomas, was MIA. We don't know why Thomas was MIA. But it could be like something as simple as he'd kind of given up hope. Him and the 11 others, they were handpicked by Jesus. And when Jesus handpicked them, he said to them, "Come follow me." And when they said yes to that invitation, they gave up businesses, they gave up close contact with their family members, they gave up the village and the hometowns of their origin and their descendants' origin. And they left all of that to follow Jesus. And they left all of that to follow Jesus because they placed their hope in him that he was going to be the chosen one, the king, the one that God had sent to overthrow the Roman occupying nation and forces and reestablish Israel as their own sovereign power. And then Jesus was killed. And kings aren't supposed to be killed by occupying forces. So I think it's quite plausible that Thomas had kind of moved on. What's the point? He'd given up hope. What's the point of gathering together? And he, no throne, no crown, no hope, no future. And I wonder if you can relate to this. I wonder if at some point in your life, something happened to you that was unexpected and wasn't how you would have chosen your narrative to go. You lost the job, even though you were working as hard as you knew how to. the business venture failed, even though it was your dream and you put everything you had into it financially. The ink on the divorce papers is now dry. And that's not how you saw this going. And your hopes were dashed. Well, at some level, when these things happen to us, we can kind of identify with Jesus' closest followers, that all of their hopes and dreams and everything that they put into following Jesus had seemingly amounted to nothing. And there they were, typically in their mid to late 20s, asking the question, what was the point? Asking the question, what's next? And not knowing the answer to that question. And then Jesus crashed the party. In physical form, he entered where they were huddled up. And then John records that they, when they saw Jesus, their master, they were awestruck. Well, hello, of course they were. It's probably an understatement to say they were awestruck. And we don't know if Thomas later came to them. I think it's more likely that they couldn't wait to find Thomas and tell him of their eyewitness account. Sure enough, they connected with Thomas and they told him that they had seen the Master, Jesus, very much alive. And what do you think Thomas would do in this moment? Hope's dashed, and now Jesus is alive, so hope is alive. Well, that's not actually how Thomas reacted to this news. In fact, John records, but Thomas said, "Unless I see the nail holes in his hands, put my finger in the nail holes, in fact, and stick my hand in his side, I won't believe it." Now, this sounds gross. It sounds like, why would he say, like, who would want to do that? But it's kind of likely that he wasn't requesting an opportunity to do that. It was more like he was just saying, this is so implausible that I'm going to respond with something equally ridiculous because I know it will never, ever happen. It's like the old-fashioned equivalent of our modern-day expression, when pigs fly. And from this day forward, for the next 2,000 years, up till today, Thomas has been labeled Doubting Thomas. And I'm thinking, that's a little bit cruel. I mean, it's cruel for a number of reasons. Number one, if only God had waited 2,000 years to send Jesus into the world, then when Jesus appeared back from the dead, resurrected, alive again, take a photo, send it to Thomas, post it to your socials. No one can doubt that. Take a group selfie, the disciples with Jesus. Maybe FaceTime Thomas in, or have a Zoom meeting. Hey, Thomas, guess who's alive again? And then we would have a record of that, like a visual record of that. Thomas would have never had to say, unless I can put my hand... So, but they didn't have access to any of those tools. So, I think we can probably throw Thomas a bone for being a little skeptical. He's saying it's so implausible. But the best he can say is, unless I kind of see this for myself, in fact, touch this for myself. Just over a year ago, I was in the market for a new vacuum. Now, Louise and I, we'd only ever had a, what do they call them, like a barrel vacuum with the attachment and the thing, and then it's a bag, and that thing follows you around when you're vacuuming, follows you around like an untrained puppy, and you have to, if you move from room to room, you have to unplug it, and I was over it. And I had been hearing about stick vacuums for years, which the market leader apparently was Dyson. So I'm thinking to myself, we probably need to get a Dyson. So what did I do? Well, you're not going to be shocked to learn that I started looking at online reviews, eyewitness accounts, people who've seen it, used it, touched it, and I wanted to know. I wanted to hear it from them. And pretty positive for the most part. Always a glitch, but for the most part, pretty positive. Well, that prompted me not initially to just order one online, because, here in Australia, they can run up to about $1,200, $1,300, $1,500. So if I'm going to throw that sort of cash down on a vacuum cleaner, I'm going to want to step it up. So I went to the Dyson Demonstration Center. And in I walked, and I met Phyllis. Now, Phyllis, oh my, look, they should make her the new CEO of the company. She was phenomenal. She brought me in. She grabbed one of the models that I was interested in. She laid it out on the counter. She put all the attachments out like a sushi chef would, putting out all of the different. And she proceeded to explain, this one does this, and this one does this, and this one does this. And then on the floor of the demonstration center, they have different flooring materials. They've got carpet, they've got wood, they've got vinyl. And she starts scattering different dirt and schmutz on them, Fruit Loops onto the hard floor and so on and so forth. And then she grabbed the correct attachment and she's using that on that particular floor surface. And then she'd swap out the attachments and show me how easy it was to swap out the attachments and then go to the next. And on it went and on it went. And at one point, while there was a queue of people waiting for their turn, I just had to say to Phyllis, stop. I've seen enough. Sign me up. I'm convinced. I'm buying it. I don't need any more reviews. I don't need any more convincing. I've seen it. I've touched it. I was there, and I'm good to go. Well, John continued his eyewitness account. And he wrote, 8 days later, his disciples were again in the room. This time, Thomas was with them. Jesus came through the locked doors, stood among them, and said, "Peace to you." And then he focused his attention on Thomas. Take your finger and examine my hands. Take your hands and stick it in my side. Don't be unbelieving. Believe. But Thomas said, I've seen enough. My master, my God. And Jesus said, so you believe because you've seen with your own eyes. Even better blessings are in store for those who believe without seeing. There's a few just quick takeaways I want to leave us with today. First of all, John recorded that after greeting everyone, Jesus zoomed in on Thomas. But he didn't call him out. He didn't call him doubting Thomas. He didn't titch him. He didn't shame him. He didn't say, "What's this I heard about?" Jesus didn't label Thomas based on his worst moment. He called him up and called him out because he wanted the relationship to be reinstated. He wanted Thomas to have his hope renewed, to have this journey continue, and ultimately for Thomas to go out from that place and say, "I've seen, I'm an eyewitness." And I appreciate that not everyone got that opportunity, but take my word for it. It's true. Jesus is alive. And in fact, going from Jerusalem, Thomas ultimately went out as far as India, and it was actually there where he was killed. But he went that far, so empowered and so renewed and so focused on telling other people that Jesus is who he says he is, and that he rose from the dead, just like he said he would. That he went as far as India. He wouldn't have done that, I don't think, if Jesus had called him out and called him Doubting Thomas, labeled him in his worst possible moment. You know, we're called to do the same today. We're called to put our faith in Jesus rising from the dead based on these eyewitness accounts. Mary of Magdalene, who we're about to catch a little bit of a glimpse of her experience with Jesus, and some of the other women, those locked up in this upper room for fear of the Jews, Thomas rejoining them, and then Jesus ultimately appeared to over 500 people physically in the flesh. And those eyewitness accounts were recorded by 4 of Jesus' biographers. And we can read them and place our faith that those who saw him, yeah, sure, they had a leg up. But Jesus said we're even more blessed if we put our faith in what they saw, even though we haven't physically seen him in our time. Have the great rest of the Easter, celebrating the fact that Jesus is risen. And here's a little reminder of the nature and character of who Jesus is through another one of the eyewitnesses.
I have been the object of disbelief my whole life. It greeted me as a child, this disbelief. And it helped itself to me, to my heart, marking me so deeply that, well, you don't know the level of repulsion people feel for you until you spend a good portion of your life not being looked in the eye. That was my life up until the moment Jesus found me. And what an unbelievable state he found me in. So, we packed, we cleaned, and we gathered for 3 years, though it felt like only days. And then the time came. Well, until his days were accomplished and he did what he came to do. If you've walked a life anything like me, you know what I mean when I say that sometimes people try to put onto you what Jesus removed. He was only gone from us, but a couple of days the first time it happened. That mighty, miraculous morning, I went to the tomb, and he was very not dead. He called me by my name, and he gave me very specific instructions. So I ran to tell the disciples what I had seen, that he was alive. And they didn't believe me. I mean, had they forgotten that we stood shoulder to shoulder all this time? I may not be one of the 12 or 11 now, but I followed him just the same. But you know what? Their perception of me is not the image Jesus saw. I was no longer the cracked and crooked house that demons dwelt in. Because the moment I realized Jesus believed in me, I believed in him. And eventually, the disciples, they'd come around. Jesus kept appearing to a few, then to hundreds. But even after all that, there would still be some who didn't believe. He warned us about that. But more importantly, there would be other people, many other people who would never see it for themselves, but still believe. So that's why we keep going until we reach every person who once and for all is done with disbelief.
So if you've had a chance to give before, we really appreciate it. And if you'd like to today, the links are down below. So great having you here today. And please tune in for our next series next week, God Is.